Thank you very much indeed. Fantastic victory, fantastically important 2-0 for the side of Rocket. And also welcome to the post-game lobby here at the LCS. We are still joined by UOL's Vizicsacsi, as well as Castrovetti and Martini to kick off the post-game lobby. And well, just talk about everything that happened. And of course, we're going to start off with that 2-0, as said by the casters. The first 2-0 for Rocket since week 2 of the summer split and came right at the right time. What went well for them in this second game specifically? It looked possibly even more straightforward than the first one, where they were a little more hesitant. What do you think?
They they got already ahead at the lane swap because they got an early kill on Sprattle. They got tower advantage and they could dominate mid lane all along because Fox for some reason was running exhaust on GP, which I think is a bad choice, since with teleport he could have provided a lot more to not only laning but later on as well.
Yeah, basically his summoner choice meant that he lost the lane. Also, they wanted to play 1-3-1 in the mid to late game, but he was sitting bot lane, losing the matchup against the Malzahar anyway, and none of them have teleport. But because the Malzahar is winning the matchup, he's actually putting pressure on the map, and GP just kind of sat back and did almost nothing. And then also in team fights, he couldn't execute like barrel combos when needed. He had a really bad game, and I'm not calling out a specific player here, but I actually feel like he's been dipping down in performance towards the end of the split compared to the player we saw in the start of the split who would be one of the absolute best mid laners we had in Europe.
That's an interesting discussion. I think we posed the same question to the coaches last week. You asked Yamato and Parley, I think, why is it that the teams that Fox is on always seem to do good in the beginning and then fall off towards the end? And our explanation, or your explanation, was, well, because all the other teams aren't as prepared in the beginning of the split, so a team with a very strong solo laner can pick up a lot of wins. However, do you think it is just Fox falling off now? Because that would be a new observation. Maybe Vetti?
Well, I mean, we have to remember that one of the big changes that we've had in the mid lane is Azir and Victor, very little priority, something that Fox has had a lot of prowess on. And with the introduction of Malzahar, it does seem that he was just trying to pick something that was a little bit of a niche. And while I can understand why it is a good pick into Malz, like it has strengths like the oranges to remove the ultimate, it lacks wave clear, it doesn't really stop Malzahar from doing what it's doing. And the fact that Fox doesn't seem to be as comfortable right now as he typically is, could very well see something that, I don't know whether it's a team thing or whether or not it's him as an individual, because I think there are a lot of aspects about it that it's not just him underperforming, there are a lot of other aspects of that team that are dropping.
Yeah, I think you look at the entire team, like it's really hard as an individual player to perform if your team is not doing well. I think like Chachi, just to bring you into this one, and no flame intended here, but like your performance in the start of the split compared to now is super, super different. I feel like in the start we didn't get to see the same Chachi where you were doing really well as a split pusher and you had a lot of impact on the game, but now suddenly you're playing much better. Was that also because the team around you got better, or was it more like your individual performance?
Or the meta?
Well, definitely the team around me got better. We got more used to the stage, and if you have stable laners everywhere, you just feel like it's fine for you to go at least even with someone. And you will just win the game with your team strengths, like team fighting, rotations and such. So it gives you a lot of confidence about just going even or like trying to get ahead maybe.
And right now Schalke looks just broken. Like it seems like no one trusts each other anymore. In the first game we highlighted like Gilly is invading in when his mid lane is out of mana and he dies. This game, you know, we talked about some of the issues in these team fights. I mean, we have one ready even where suddenly some of the key skill shots are being missed, like a GP barrel doesn't get executed properly and suddenly he deals like under 1,000 damage in the first fight compared to the enemy Rumble who does like 5k. Chachi, talk us through the fight.
Yeah, well, to be honest, this Rumble that is just coming through is gonna be the one that carries the whole fight for Rocket, because it owns the whole backline from Schalke, so Sivir couldn't land autos either, and the GP just misbarrel, steal back solo kills him. And even though Steve has like a really good ultimate at the end, it doesn't really help because the carries are already dead.
Super cool move from Steelbike in that fight. First barrel obviously get missed because he Qs onto the enemy champ. I think maybe it was on Olaf. He hit with a Q instead of the barrel. But then the second barrel, Steelbike obviously over the wall with that, dodges around the damage, takes down the GP very easily. So good team fight from him. What we expect from Steelbike, obviously.
He's a great player. This also means that Rocket is still contention for playoff, but as we said, it just will be very interesting for them to pick up points and go higher in the standings to get a more favorable position, obviously, in the promotion tournament, this and that. Avoid misfits, of course, is something very important for all the teams down in the bottom of the table.
Have you scrimmed misfits?
Yes, we have.
Do you think, compared to the bottom teams, they're higher level?
I would say they could be like a mid-tier LCS team right now. They are quite strong.
Would you think of, when you think of Misfits, do you think of Origin, of when
Yes.
they were coming through Challenger?
Exactly.
Yeah,
They
okay.
kind of remind me of Origin. Really strong challenger performance, and they could be a strong LCS team as well.
You should have said
Right.
Unicorns of Love. We all remember it. Qualifying with Puppy and all that kind
Right.
of stuff. Got into the
Smacking
LCS.
TFM at IM
Make
San
the
Jose.
final. Yeah, you make the final. Damn.
We remind.
You
yeah,
missed
we
that one, Chachi.
remember. Player of the game, before we move on in this game from Roccat, Parang. Someone we were talking about, and I asked you guys actually, do you think that he was underperforming or what is that word?
Underrated?
Underrated, yeah, because I have the feeling that we didn't think he was a very strong player beforehand.
I mean, first of all, it's hard again to judge individual players when the entire team doesn't work. I feel like it's a bit of the same story. I don't think Parang has been doing that well on his own, but I don't think he's ever really been given the tools to do well either, because almost all of Rocket just have been falling apart for the entire split. Obviously in scrims could be a different story, in solo queue could be a different story, I'm not too sure. So I don't think he's been underrated or overrated. I actually think we've been judging him as a bottom tier player right now because it's what we have seen, but it's also because the team has been bottom tier for the entire split now.
So my only caveat to that is that I think that we do still need to highlight the strengths that he demonstrated in this series in particular, where his synergy with his new jungler seems to be getting better. This was something we heard from Steelback. They were working much more as a unit, and his play during the team fights was overall impressive. He landed a lot of good ultimates. Same with the Gangplank before. Something that I noticed regularly was the positioning of it, the setup for the plays was a lot more positive. And I just think that he is still growing, but we can't deny the fact that he is still, relative to a lot of the other tops in Europe, not quite at the highest level.
Chachi.
I think it's really hard to judge indeed, but when I look at top laners, I usually take into consideration how they lane and how they make the TP plays later on. And I think Parang has always been a solid laner, even from the very first time he came in. And at the beginning of the split, I feel like the meta was favoring him a lot. He was an Echo player, and Echo was meta. Also, some other champions he was good at. And the meta shifted and he couldn't adapt. I think that was his biggest problem because he still kept playing the Echo even after the nerfs, and when other champions like Gnar and such were popping up, he was very slow to adapt. And now maybe he found some new champions for himself that he's good at, like the Rumble and the GP. So I think he's playing better now because of that as well.
We'll see how it evolves. And speaking of top lane and top lane meta, we had our match of the week, Splice versus Fnatic. We had our eyes on Kikis versus Wonder, and this was a Fiora-Gnar matchup twice, and twice Splice won. And a lot of that had to do with Fiora, I think, coming back in the game and played correctly, and also Sencook's playing really, really good for Splice.
Yeah, I like to see what Splice were doing with their Casted and Fiora setup. Like 1-3-1, very, very strong dueling champions. Next game, they got a Malzahar, and Fnatic had like losing mid lane, losing bot lane, a losing jungle matchup in the early game, and then only Gnar against Fiora. And like Gnar against Fiora, the way I see it right now is Gnar can push down the Fiora to a tower. She wants to like freeze it just outside tower. But killing Fiora is very difficult. Like you need to tower dive her basically. And he actually dodged around the tower dives pretty effectively, a Wonder in this game. And then he gets like one item fully completed and he starts almost all-inning the Gnar on cooldown.
The thing about Fiora is if you get 2 items already, the Black Cleaver and Ravenous Hydra, you can basically split push against anyone. So this champion is the strongest split pusher, especially since the QSS doesn't remove it anymore. And so if she's given this time to scale, she just becomes unstoppable later on.
Do you consider a high tier pick now? Because I actually do.
It looks like. I haven't been practicing her too much, but looks like she just came back to the meta suddenly.
I think it's quite interesting that we saw a lot of the Gangplank into the Shen for similar reasons, because he was given a free lane so he could get his Trinity into Ghostblade. And I think that we'll see a similar thing for Fiora, where if she's given a free lane, then I think that she could very well rise in popularity.
Well, coincidentally, we also had or received a tweet because we asked you guys at home what you think of patch 6.14. And at DStage31 thinks the Fiora buff was essential to fight the Irelia and Jax we've been seeing. So are you guys happy that, or is that true? And are you guys happy that Fiora is in there? Because I do remember a time where all we did was saw Fiora ripping apart everybody, so...
I think there's more counterplay to the current Fiora compared to the one back at Season 5 Worlds,
Yeah.
where it was Fiora, Darius, and Gangplank every game. Whereas, like, if you gave Smep Fiora, it could be like, game's over.
Well, yeah.
You know, there's nothing you can do against him now. Fiora is, obviously because she got nerfed quite a few times, is not as dominating. I think it's good she's back. I like champions like Fiora, and people might hate me now, but I think she's interesting to watch because there's like the skill cap is pretty high on her. If you are a fantastic Fiora player, I really think you can take over games. I understand it can be annoying though, because like late game she can like one-shot tanks almost, and it gets really annoying to play against, but I think she's entertaining, and there's counterplay to her in the early game.
Yeah, we see that Wonder also got a player of the game in one of those games for his Fiora play, and I wanted to talk a little bit more about the top lane. You see today, top picks were Fiora, big surprise, and then Shen second, then Gangplank, and then Gnar. So we are definitely seeing a shift there. Vizicsacsi, what do you make of 6.14 and all of the top lane picks, and how does it suit you?
Yeah, seems like to me there is a lot of counter potential in top lane right now, because Shen kind of counters Irelia, and then there is Trundle as well that's good against her. So she's not kind of blind pickable, and then you have the Gnar into the Trundle, GP into Shen. So it basically increases the priority for top lane picks. You might just want to counter pick all the time and have a better matchup there, so you can threaten the other team by split pushing and winning during split push or something like that. So I think it's a bit of shift, but the old picks are still relevant.
What about Fiora into Irelia as a matchup? Is that pure skill matchup?
Yeah, it's skill matchup.
Okay.
I would say it's a lot of mind games. If you can block the stun of Irelia, Fiora wins, and if you can't, then Irelia
So
wins.
can you win?
Comes down to the mind games.
What about Alawi in these 4 picks?
Ilaoi is good against all of them, but
Spoken like a true unicorn player.
They drew 2 Ilaoi bans today against G2, so it's definitely something that teams consider a threat.
But you're the only one playing it. It
yes.
seems.
I think the
He's
main
the
reason why they are banning it is because they just don't really know how to play against it. They lack the experience, so it's something annoying for them, and it's better to just remove.
Interesting. Well, let's take a look at that matchup today. G2 2-0 duo. Well, of course, it wasn't the best day for you guys against the league leaders. Obviously, it's not easy. But what did you identify as kind of the main issues for you guys?
Here in this first game, I think we had TP advantage on me, but the enemy duo lane swapped to the bot lane, and they just denied the TP advantage with that. And we were slow to react to this. I think that was the main issue. Then they slaughtered us at the Rift Herald later, and the game was over basically after that. And in game 2, yes, this fight that we just see is basically that won them the game. We were killing them before, like 30 seconds before, and then we just overchased and died.
So how do you look at this now? We were kind of theorizing here on the desk that against the league leaders, it's not really someone you're going to catch up to. So it's not as bad of as an 0-2 than maybe some other matchups. How do you guys look at it?
I think it's fine-ish to go 0-2 against G2 since they are the strongest. But didn't expect to lose like in this fashion as the first game, because I think we kind of got stomped there in like 26 minutes. It's quite a fast game. But I think tomorrow we have better chances against Rocket. So we should just look forward to that game and try to win as much as possible so we can secure a playoff spot.
Yeah, you got to focus on the positive aspects of the game.
Why are you smiling at me?
Because I wanted to fit it in somewhere, but I thought the pick was interesting, and I like the fact that it was brought out.
Who?
Which pick?
The Urgot.
Oh.
Yeah, right. Oh, God, we almost forgot.
You
That's
got to
brilliant.
be kidding me. Yes, something that we regularly heard. But in the early game, you guys got first blood. Was crazy. It was a crazy first blood, and then unfortunately, you immediately handed it back. But still, I'd like to hear what you think about Urgot in general, whether or not you think it's super strong. Can you even tell us anything about the Urgot?
When I heard that we got the first blood in game 1, that was super cool feeling. I was like, we are winning top lane super hard, and then suddenly we die as well. And there was like no communication, what's happening up there. And then, well, but we are still leading in that lane, and I think Urgot in general is someone that can dominate the lane against most champions. So we consider it quite strong, but I guess it's a bit harder to play on stage, and we also misplayed a lot in that game, so couldn't really see the strengths of the pick. We might bring it out another time again.
You were like, you're gonna get got, but then...
Yeah, we had actually planned that Chachi would make sure to announce to the world that Urgot was terrible, and you shouldn't play it.
Why?
Because we didn't want people to know that Unicorns actually like
Well,
to
they
play the
played it
Urgot.
today. I mean, the cat's out
Yeah,
of the
but
bag.
it's
Why
like
wasn't
team will
cat in the
pick.
bag
It'd be
in the
like the
first
team will
place?
pick. They're like, nah, we just tried
Maybe
it
I'm
once.
just saying that it's good. So.
Yeah, it's mind games here. Ban Urgot.
Something that I do want to jump onto is the fact that in Perks in the interview, we heard that he said like 2 weeks before playoffs is where you kind of become super serious for them because they probably have a bye and just not try as many crazy things anymore. How much of a strength do you think it is for your team that you seem to be the only team that still dares to take these risks in these matches?
I think it's good to have some pocket picks ready all the time. Maybe it's not good to shoot them before playoffs, especially if you are already in playoffs. It's better to just keep them for yourself and maybe surprise someone with it later. But I think when you are in race for playoffs, bringing out a pocket pick from every now and then is pretty good, just to surprise your opponents and put them off guard.
Now, speaking about playoffs, Unicorns of Love have never missed playoffs.
True.
Ever since they joined the LCS. Because obviously the first split you guys joined, you made all the way to the final.
Twice?
Yes.
Yeah, made the finals.
Once,
yeah. Spring split, they made finals. Summer
Virus in the
split.
first game, Power of Evil.
Yeah, I remember that. The Virus as well. A crowd in Spain went nuts. It was pretty insane.
Yeah.
But you guys, ever since the first spring split, summer split, you lost to Fnatic in the semifinal. And then obviously now last split, you guys lost in the quarterfinal to Origen. You're now looking to make it into playoffs again, but probably like one of the lowest seeds.
What's your question?
How does that feel? Like to go from like being like in the final and then ever since you guys have never really been able to achieve the same success, yet you keep making playoffs. Do you just feel like a middle of the pack team? Is that okay? Or do you feel like you have to be able to make more out of it?
I think we have to be able to take more out of it this split. Since we started really badly the split, we dropped a lot of points, and now we are on the rise again. So I feel like we could be like a contender in every best of 5 against every team. So I'm looking forward to, if we get to the playoffs, to achieve some good place or something that might give us a chance to even qualify for Worlds later on.
Because I assume that's the big goal, right?
Yes. Also, our record, I think, in playoffs, the last best of 5s is like 0-12. So we have to win.
Yeah, I have to win. You're throwing out those weird picks already, so teams are like, "Whoa, unicorns!"
Lowy ban, Urgot ban.
No, we don't have
one
that.
left.
Damn. Okay, let's take a look at another series that happened today. H2K versus Vitality, obviously super important. H2K in a bit of a slump the last couple of weeks, but they 2-0'd Vitality. Very strong performance for them and very much needed win, Vidius.
Yes, it definitely was. I really enjoyed watching how H2K set up a lot of their plays because they actually took 2 very early Barons. We did see a Sona come out from Vitality.
Yeah, the only one.
The only one. And he did have a couple of good engages, but overall the Sona didn't really do much. But what impressed me the most about H2K was just the way in which they set up a lot of the plays and then the follow-up execution. They just seemed so much cleaner, so much more decisive. And when we looked at their communication when things were so messy, it did appear that their communication in this week was just that much better. They just seem to have a much better understanding. The only caveat to that is they are going up against Vitality, who is still in the bottom half of the table, who still have a lot of issues themselves. And I wonder whether or not they can continue this throughout the rest of the week.
But we say bottom half of the table, they were still like 2 points only.
Yeah, there's
behind
only
H2K,
2 points
like,
separating.
Yeah, 1 point behind Unicorns of Love. So like that group of the 5 teams of Giants, Unicorns, Vitality, Schalke, I guess maybe not anymore after they lost again, but they're still near because you guys lost 2. So there's so many teams still fighting against each other. Taking out a direct opponent is huge for H2K when it comes to making playoffs. Great for you guys as well, obviously, that both Schalke and Vitality are losing because those are the guys under you.
Yes.
You're trying to keep down in the basement. So I think there's been some very interesting results and only 2 zeros today as well.
So, teams are always like, oh, you know, a tie again, but it shows that when they need the points, they can get those
But they
2
try
out.
hard and get better.
Yeah, all we had to do was get to week 8.
I think last week we had a lot of 2 zeros as well.
Yeah.
So maybe make week 7.
I think the important thing is consistency. Deficio said it a lot, especially when players came on the on the desk, and they were very much like, "Hey, you know what? 1-1 doesn't feel that satisfying." And Deficio was like, "If only you were more consistent, you could have walked away with a 2-0 and felt extremely
Yeah, because then
satisfied."
it's exactly the same as a BO3 if you just 2-0 anyway.
Exactly.
I mean, it is very important for gentlemen sitting right here. Giants is 3
Me?
points ahead of the...
Oh.
It's not always about you. Okay, I have this. Whenever you're going out of your bounds, I'm going to be like, stop.
The shave bill.
I don't know what it's here. what I wanted to come back to is the fact that Giants are 3 points ahead of the Unicorns of Love now in the standings in 5th, and they have 2 series wins rather more than Unicorns of Love. So these 2 O's are super important when it comes down to possible tiebreakers and this, that. How much are you looking at Giants as a contender for, well, playoffs and beyond?
It seems like they're most likely going to make it since they are 3 points ahead and it's quite stacked there. It's like 4 teams, 5 teams fighting for a playoff spot, which is quite unusual to the previous splits since it has never been the case. But I guess it's the best of 2 format and everyone having a lot of ties. So it's quite intense right now, and I think like a lot of surprises can happen still.
Yeah.
But I think we want to make it there for sure. So
Yeah.
we'll work hard for it.
I have a surprise.
Tell me a surprise.
All right. OG versus Giants. Peke is playing 80 carry tomorrow versus Fnatic.
They're replacing Toaster.
Well, not replacing. They
Well,
have a
benching
subsystem.
Toaster.
Yeah, they have a subsystem, obviously. Discuss.
Whew, interesting. I mean,
I don't know if I like that.
Toaster was okay last week, his first week on stage, I felt like. And now, the games today, where Toaster clearly obviously didn't have like good enough performance, I feel, but Peke subbing him back in as AD carry. I actually thought he was done playing AD carry and there was a high chance he would sub in as a mid laner all of a sudden.
You're shocked.
Yeah, I'm actually pretty shocked. Now we can show B-roll apparently of Toaster dying.
I unfortunately didn't get to see these games because I was casting at the same time, but from what I heard, it was just very much a commanding performance from Giants. Was it underperforming from OG, or was it just Giants looking very convincing?
I think Giants showed...
Giants with Knight were back to their regular form, so to say, of what we can be accustomed to.
Let's be real, we cannot be surprised anymore. Origen has been down in the bottom of the standings for almost the entire split, so the fact that Giants, who had actually been looking pretty good, you know, for the entire split, have been looking much better the last few weeks, obviously except for last week specifically. I don't think it was surprising they beat Origen. Chachi, maybe you disagree, but I think Giants have shown they are a middle-of-the-pack team, and Origen have shown they are bottom of the table.
And who do we know who Origen plays tomorrow?
They play Fnatic, and the sub is only for game 1 for now, so obviously the teams can change.
Surprising.
So.
That is quite surprising.
Chachi, what do you
I
think?
agree. It's kind of surprising since they just brought in Toaster, and I didn't see today's game, so I can't really judge, but I feel like it's quite sudden to just change him again. He didn't really get the time to show himself. So
Also for confidence.
Yeah, I agree. It's such a young player too. Odd. I mean, of course, we don't know. Maybe he's not feeling well, this or that. That's what happened. We know when Power of Evil was subbed out first. So Power of Evil wasn't feeling well.
Obviously, again, we don't have the behind-the-scene knowledge of what is going on with Origen, but I definitely thought Toaster was there and they would give him time for the last few weeks because Peke obviously didn't manage to have a good performance as an AD carry. It wasn't like Peke was great and they subbed him out anyway. No, Peke like had a hard time showing up, so definitely a surprise. But then again, Origen right now, they are desperate for points and they're trying to see if they can upset Fnatic clearly.
Would you have rather seen him sub in for the mid lane?
No, I think after he's been practicing AD carry for 5 to 6 weeks now, you don't put him back into the mid lane. I think that's too weird.
That is too weird, but replacing the new AD carry you got 2 weeks ago by the mid laner turn AD carry is not?
I mean, the whole Origen thing is strange overall. I mean, clearly they think they need the leadership of the...
Yeah.
Like, whatever experience that this Peke brings. Because it's not like they think Peke is a better AD carry than Toaster, because then they wouldn't have replaced him in the first place with Toaster. So I think they're just looking for maybe something special against Fnatic, hoping to pull out a 1-1, because they're obviously not going in expecting to 2-0 them.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a good surprise factor, so to say, and it would make a great story, I guess. But only 3 best of 2s remaining before the playoffs. Let's take a look at the standings. We've been talking a lot about them. G2's in first, and Splice has claimed the throne for second, and is now 2 points ahead of Fnatic, then H2K getting some well-needed points, and the Unicorns of Love currently in 6th, 1 point ahead of Schalke, and less series win? No, 1 more.
I actually think if you just swap Vitality and Schalke here, you could almost lock it. And I would not be surprised. That would be my prediction for how our playoff is going to look. Vitality gets number 7, so they get the safe spot. Schalke goes promotion tournament with Origen and Rocket. And Giants, Unicorns of Love, and H2K make it into playoffs.
My only caveat to that is when we looked at the strength of schedule for H2K and when we looked at it for Giants, I think Giants have a much easier time.
But they're both in playoffs.
Yes, but I do
think you want to swap them.
In terms of the seeding, I think that there is a chance that Giants could move into 4th.
Yeah.
And if Fnatic have a similar performance to today, maybe 3rd, but I don't want to push it. I just think that Giants could slide their way into 4th simply due to strength of schedule.
Yeah, Giants is playing Schalke, Vitality, and Rocket next. So
yeah, they have the easiest schedule of any team,
yeah.
definitely.
And for you, Chachi, you're playing, well, not G2, you're playing Splice, H2K, And
Rocket,
Rocket,
yes.
yeah, well, you know this obviously, but for the viewers, what do you make of those opponents?
I think against Rocket we kinda need a tool, but judging from today's performance from us, we played weaker than usual and they played better than usual. So it might be a bit harder to beat them than we originally thought. And next week we will have tough opponents to play against. H2K and Splice both are quite strong, so we will need at least one win against both of them. So gonna be hard for us.
And then the UOL playoff magic begins. Splice in second.
Yeah, I think they're gonna stay in second.
Yeah.
I think so too.
The game today was what decided the top two,
Yep.
in my opinion, because now Splice can decide themselves. As long as they do not manage to drop games the next few weeks or next 2 weeks here, they get that second place. And Fnatic will have to take third and then play against, by the looks of it right now, the Unicorns of Love in like a first quarterfinal. So suddenly for them, they have to take a much longer route towards the final.
We heard in an interview earlier on with Perks, he said, I believe 100% Splice are second place team. That's why G2 have been scrimming them so much, the amount of respect that they show to them. And I think you just can't underestimate. I believe I was told earlier on in the break room that Splice took the bot tower in game 2 at like 10 minutes. Like against Fnatic's bottom lane.
Stomp Fnatic.
Yeah.
So game 2 was a stomp.
I mean,
Massive
it's crazy to think how far Splice have come in when they were like not even considered playoff contention last
Yeah,
split.
super interesting. Also, is there a break room? Did you
Just
know about this?
Where I go
stomp.
to
I've
have
been
a
up here all
break.
day.
Oh,
Where
you mean
Where I go to have a break.
Wait. Oh, never mind then. Let's take a
I don't
look.
want to hear about your
Let's
room.
take a look at the standout players of the night, the player of the game leaderboard, 1 to 10. This is for day 1. We have Wonder, Trashy, Jankos, Ryu, and Sunstar today. We had both of them here on the desk. Wonder and Trashy doing fantastic. And then Knight, Trick, Perks, Steelback, and Harang. Well, Trick, that's another one. I don't think he's giving up that title. And Knight is back in there. Obviously, whenever Knights and the Holy Trinity do well, then Giants are able to get a lot of wins. So you saw more of that again today?
Well, unfortunately, I didn't get to see the Giants
Right.
one, but
Yes.
it's always good to hear that they are doing well.
Smitty J showed up on Fiora. Definitely Knight had a great game. So the Holy Trinity is back. But I will add in that
Well,
actually
Sunstar, he got
Sunstar
up
and
there.
Austin have been playing pretty well.
Yeah.
too. What do you think about Giants, by the way? And like Smitty J up on top lane?
Yeah, I think they are quite top lane centric team, or like top lane, mid lane rather. And
We like
Like
to
a
do this.
triangle, yeah.
The Holy
Yeah.
Trinity.
okay.
Max Low, Knight, and Smitty J.
Yes, that's kind of true because Sunstar just receives very little amount of resources and he has to work with that. And meanwhile, Smithy J and Knight just gets most of it. So they are like the main carries of the team.
Yep, they are. Let's take a look at the player of the game leaderboard overall as the end of the split draws closer. The first 5 here. Trick in number 1 with 9 points. Jankos 7. Knight 7. Cabochard, yeah, down to 6 because, of course, not the best performance today. Power of Evil then also 6 points. And looking at the next 5, Spirit, Trashy, Wonder, and 11-way tie. So we're losing the ties, hopefully.
I think
for
you're
tiebreakers.
you're in that tie. I think.
Yeah, you're
Yes.
definitely Chachi.
with your 4 player of the game.
I thought Trashy would be higher. Yeah, in all honesty, I feel like for Splice, he's been a big
Yeah.
facilitator for their success. But
What is up with you and the pens today?
I had a question for Chachi about player of the game.
Yes.
As a player, do you care a lot about getting it, or is this like, nah, it's a broadcast?
Actually, not at all.
Not at all.
No.
so no, never give
Because
it
I know
to
a
Chachi
lot of
'cause he
other
doesn't
players,
care.
a lot of other players, they're like,
Nagging.
I don't care about it. And then when they're doing it, it's like, why didn't I get it? like, right to all of us, like, hello, what happened here? And I was supposed to get it. I'm like, all right, calm down.
Yeah, not to name any names, Trashy. But, you know, it's difficult when all that team's doing well. But I think we recognize it more. We try to be honest here.
It is really difficult though when multiple,
Yes.
like you were now part of deciding player of the game for some of them. It's really hard when multiple of them are showing up, and then you always judge individual things like, did he have a massive turnaround in a team fight that
KDA.
made him back in the game?
No.
Not KDA. Did he like steal a super important Baron? It is difficult. Cool.
Yo, it's difficult. Week 8 of the European LCS continues tomorrow at 5 p.m. Central European Summertime. Kicking off with a battle of the league's top contenders, H2K versus Splice. Yummy, what a fantastic matchup that is to start us off. Cool stuff. Also Giants versus Vitality, obviously UL versus Rocket, G2 versus Schalke, and OG versus Fnatic.
It's funny how maybe only 2 weeks ago, Deficio, you and I would have thought that G2 versus Schalke would have been one of the hype matchups. You know, Schalke looked really promising. We thought that they'd be top 6, maybe even top 4, and we thought, hey, that could be a really promising game. And now we're sitting there thinking this is going to be a one-sided stop.
Yeah, it probably will be. I mean, it should be a 2-0 for G2. If they were able to take you guys down today without, you know, too many issues.
Yep.
Schalke should get stomped, obviously, in that game. But that's where sometimes you get the turnarounds, you get the surprises, and this is really weird without a pen in my hands.
Hey, by the way, I offered you one, but you looked away.
Got it. Got it.
So I just said it. It's fine.
Got the right pen.
All right. Any case, in case you missed it earlier in the show, something was amiss in the Rift. We saw the reunion of the oddest of couples. They're daring, different, and together they are a force to be reckoned with.
You're trespassing.
Chachi hadn't seen that yet.
No, I haven't.
What do you think?
Looks good.
Yeah, it looks interesting, doesn't it? He's like secretly hoping.
Yes, I secretly hope that it's top laner, so
It does look
For
like
you,
a
everything's top.
yes.
That's fair, that's fair.
It's worth a try already.
Yeah,
We'll see.
we'll see. Well, cool stuff. Thank you so much for joining us, Chachi.
Thanks you for having me.
Yeah, and good luck tomorrow versus Rocket and possibly in the playoffs as well. Before we go, also just one quick reminder. Next week, European LCS will be on Saturday and Sunday. Just a quick heads up so everybody has heard it. And now for us, though, tomorrow we'll be back same time, same league place tomorrow at 5 p.m. Central European Summertime. From all of the broadcasts here in Berlin, see you tomorrow. And